Welcome to the Trigger Warning Talks podcast, where we have uncensored conversations. We exchange information. We don't do therapy here. You got to go somewhere else for that, because this is just a podcast. And we have a ton of resources for the listeners, for the watchers. That's right. I said watchers because we don't just do audio here. We got video, and this is going to be a great video and audio podcast with my beloved sister. I'm going to get into her and her story. Well, she's going to get into her story. I'm just going to be moderating. I'm just going to be sitting back. I got my pen here. I got my paper here. I got my water here. She got her water there. We're just going to have a great conversation. Now, let me get all the housekeeping things out of the way before we get started. On a serious note, again, this is the Trigger Warning Talk podcast. We're streaming everywhere, including Audible. If you're triggered at any time during this podcast and you need help immediately, call 911 because your fireman CEO brother's retired. Talibah ain't coming out there where you are. If you don't have an immediate need, what you can do is in every podcast episode we do, in the show notes, we got a ton of resources available because we cover domestic violence. We're going to be talking about that today. Sexual trauma, we'll talk about that today. We cover missing persons at the end. We're going to be talking about that. We do human and sex trafficking. We won't be talking about that particular issue today. However, we have those phone numbers and websites available. Trafficking, domestic violence, sexually based offenses. We got the numbers and the websites. If you have any issues with substance abuse, be it alcohol or drugs, we have ALLAHNIA for the supporters. We have Narcotics Anonymous, and we have AA. If you are suicidal, know somebody's suicidal, seen some suicidal stuff, call 988. That's the 911 number that's available nationwide here in the States. Again, 988. I want you to understand that these conversations are real talk. This is adults talking to adults. So if you got any kids or anybody under 18, you might want to have them in another room because we have real talk. You might hear some F-bombs or something like that. We don't do fluff. That's what you add to cappuccinos and shit. That's what you do to pillows, as I say. So, without further ado, I want to introduce this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful friend of mine, Mrs. Talibah L. You know, I wish I had your CV in front of me, because you got so much stuff that you do. I'm just going to give them the Cliff Notes version of it. Okay. And I mean the real Cliff Notes version. Mrs. Allen is the founder and CEO of the Pure Love Garden Therapy Co-op. She's going to talk about that later on in our shameless plug segment. She's also the host and co-host of a number of podcasts. Analyze This, Meet the Allens, and also Tea Time with T. You can find some of these on Clubhouse. You can find some of these on YouTube. I got on the screen, for those that are watching this, I got her Instagram handles on the screen where you can get in touch with her. I'll have all that information or where you can get in touch with her in the show notes also. Without further ado, Talibah, Miss Tea Time.
Hey.
What's going on, lady?
Hey, y'all. It is your girl, Talibah, a.k.a. Tea Time with T. Hey, I'm just out here just trying to do, or excuse me, let me correct, because I got to watch my words, okay? I'm striving.
Striving.
That's right. Striving to do God's work. I'm the CEO of Pure Love Garden Therapy. My mission is to use the gift that God gave me with my hands to feed as many people as I can. And I have garden co-ops that I am definitely putting we across the map. You know, I have one here in Portland, Oregon. Actually, I have two. I have one, of course, that I started for myself during a very, very, very dark time in my life. I was going through a lot of stuff in my marriage, in my personal life, and I had no one to turn to. The friends that I thought that I had, they like literally disappeared. You know, I mean, like literally, I don't know why they turned their backs, but that was the best thing that God could ever have done for me. Okay. So while I was in that darkness by myself, I really got into gardening. Now, gardening has been something that has been in my family for many, many years. It's not something that I thought I was going to adapt myself to because I'm a 9-to-5er. I'm a corporate America chick. But during this time, it was just really detrimental. I had to find something. So, you know, when you go to the dark times, you can either, and it was COVID. Oh, I forgot that. It was definitely, it started in 2019, the very brink of COVID, and then 2020. Okay. And at that time, everything was closed. So, you know, I do love me some good tequila. However, the bars were closed. Right. The liquor stores were closed. Like everything was closed. So it was like what my normal coping mechanisms, which might not always be the right ones, were gone. And so at that particular time, I had to find something to help my mental status get back together because I was by myself. Okay. And I got into gardening and I started in, like I said, 2019, 2020. Here we are, 2022. Now I know my purpose in life because sometimes God has to put you through them dark times to get you to your purpose. So Pure Love Garden Therapy is my baby. I have 2 co-ops so far. I have one in Oregon where I live. I have one in Arkansas with Miss Kitty. And I'm striving to go just state to state, really to teach self-sustainability. We see what's going on in the world, government. There's going to be a time where we're not going to be able to walk into the stores and get the foods that we need. And even now that we can do that, those labels, those organic labels they throwing on them fruits and vegetables, them fruits and vegetables have pesticides and all kinds, so they're not organic. So my goal is to ultimately teach people how to garden. You don't have to have land. You just have a back patio and self-sustainability. So that's pretty much where I am. I still have my 9-to-5. I'm still in medical insurance. I still am in school. I'm learning everything, but I'm just really walking in my purpose at this particular time. So I really appreciate you having me as a guest today.
It's about to go down.
Oh, it's going down.
And it towards the end, when we do our shameless plug, you got to give us some more information about this.
I'll give you some more. But we're going to get into the real nitty gritty right now.
You know, Talibah, I've been waiting on this interview for a cool minute. I really have. And here's why. Because we're in Clubhouse on a weekly basis in a number of different rooms under the mansion that's called Loyalty and Friends.
That's right.
And every time you come in up on the stage, as we call it in Clubhouse, to speak, I'm always taking mental notes of what you verbally contribute to whatever the conversation, be it the men's mental health hour, be it the journal room, be it the men ESN room, the women's mental health hour, your podcast, and Tea Time with T, you know, the Meet the Allen. So I'm always listening because you give such interpersonal responses to the topic at hand. Mm-hmm. And with such intelligence, like you remind me of me. I speak with compassion from a compassionate point of. I speak with passion from a compassionate point of view.
Yeah.
Or I could flip it around. I speak compassionately with a passionate voice. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can be bothersome to people.
Very.
Sometimes it can be triggering to people because they look at it like, oh my God, like, you know, you're at a 10, I'm gonna need you at a 2. It's like, no, my confidence, as Deion Sanders said, should not bother your insecurities.
My light can't dim for your insecurities, right? Okay. Like
You're from Portland, Oregon, correct? Yes. Born and raised?
Actually, surprisingly, I was born in Iowa City, Iowa. Okay.
You're Midwestern like me? See?
Yes, I'm Midwestern. I was born in Iowa. My mom and dad went to University of Iowa, so that's pretty much where I was conceived and born. And then I lived in Michigan for a lot of time. So I'm originally a Midwester, but I am now an Oregonian, and I have been for many years. So yes, I have Midwestern traditions and Pacific traditions.
I knew it was something about you that I like. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, so now I'm in Charlotte. So we got the Midwestern thing going. We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that.
Right, another topic, right?
Where would you say that trouble began for you when we're talking about these triggering topics?
Good question. Actually, trouble began for me in childhood. It's funny to talk about it now because my healing has taken me so far, and I used to dwell in those places, but I'm going to take myself back there. Like, trauma started for me when my mother was dealing with her own trauma.
Okay.
And, not really knowing her self-worth and who she was and the type of men she was attracting. And it even goes further than that because my grandmother was dealing with her own traumas and not knowing who she was. And so, certain things have now that, when you really do that shadow work and when you really do that healing of yourself and stop blaming other people for your actions, but really try to go and find out what's wrong with you, you can find out a lot of interesting things that are, passed down. But for me, mine started in my childhood. And it started because my mom had her traumas and my dad had his traumas. And, I just wasn't taught. I didn't have relationships with my fathers. And the reason why I say plural is because I have a biological father that was never there. And I also have I call him bonus, but the one that was married to my mom that raised me, the one that she was pregnant with when she first got with. So that's my dad. That's the only dad that I had. But there was a lot of verbal abuse, there was a lot of her not knowing her self-worth and my dad not knowing his trauma. His dad was an alcoholic. And trauma is so detrimental to where when you get to a certain point, you can't blame your parents no more. You have to just really, love them for what they knew at that time and really understand that. But yes, mine started at childhood. My dad wasn't equipped to pour into me the qualities that a young woman or young girl needed to know what a man should, or, how a man should treat a woman. Mm-hmm. And then with my mom going through her own traumas, I really didn't have that knowledge on the boundaries that a woman was supposed to, navigate through life. So, yeah, I remember a lot of childhood trauma. So, yeah, I would have to say mine started in childhood.
Was this in Iowa or was this in Oregon?
This is going to be in Oregon because my parents moved to Oregon in 1979. Yes, I'm about to age myself, but that's okay. So they moved in 1979 when I was about 2.5, 3 years old. I was born in 75. So, yeah. So my mother, how she ended up getting to Oregon is she was a teacher for over 30 years. So once she graduated from University of Iowa, she came to Portland to get a teaching job. And my dad pretty much followed her here. Like, he didn't have his career set. So that's how we ended up coming here.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was life like in Oregon?
Well, I will say this. Understanding when she first, let me go back. Understanding how Oregon is, Oregon still has slavery laws right now. Okay. A lot of people don't even know that. Oregon didn't even accept Black people until 1920. Okay. And it's what is it, 2022?
Yeah.
So there's still spots in Oregon that Black people should not go after sundown.
I'm in North Carolina, so Mrs. L, like, we're not going here.
Right.
I got a song for us to. It's the song that it's a country western song or something like that. She said, "I need to teach you that just in case we walk into the wrong bar, and we gotta do something
Okay.
to save our lives. And she's so serious because she was born and raised in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And she's biracial. So she's like,
Oh,
I
she
got
knows.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say for my mom, when she first came here, she definitely experienced a lot of prejudice. Prejudice. Yes. Prejudice. And yeah, just in different social aspects that she was in, because she was very educated. She was a Black woman. And well, let me go back. She was an educated Black person, and she was a woman. You have to understand those are two separate
Two
things.
separate things,
Okay?
right? Two separate
And
things.
so yeah, so she definitely experienced a lot. As far as myself, I don't remember a lot of racism until I got to 5th grade.
Okay.
Now, when I was in preschool, like I've always been a head leader. Like I've always been headstrong. My mom told me when I was 3 years old, I had the teacher crying because I had the class against her because what she was doing was not right. Like, so I've always been a leader. But when I was in 5th grade, that was the first time I had a teacher, and I got to call out his name. I don't know if he's still alive or not, but his name was Mr. Burkham. Okay. And he was a Jewish teacher. And, I didn't really understand the correlation between Jewish people and Black people back then. Okay. And people might still not to this day, but hey, do your research. But at that particular time, he was not happy that I was a young Black woman or a young Black girl. I was the head of the class. I was the top at everything. I mean, everything. My mom's a teacher. So, of course, she has these. I'm up here. And what it was is I got bored really easily because I was very smart. And if you're not challenging me, I'm going to get bored and I'm going to start acting out. And plus, I was not happy at home because of my trauma. So I was just kind of, people thought I was a bad child. I really wasn't bad. I was lost. I was hurt and I needed guidance. But this particular teacher, and we have to understand this is in the 80s. A lot of mental health work. We weren't talking about that. There was not a lot of counselors back then. Like, we're in a different time. So yes, that was the first teacher that really was really prejudiced, and he called me very bad. I had behaved like he called my mom up there all the time. Like, it was just really bad. And then the other thing was, because he was Jewish, he was forcing his Jewish religion principles on us. And I was always one of those people that questioned stuff. So when he brought in I think it's called matzah, it's like a little cracker or something, and he would want us to do these things, and I was like, "What are we doing?" Like, yeah, that was my first time. Just to sum it up, like, he did not like me.
You said that you dealt with traumas at home. What were some of those traumas that you experienced that affected you outside of the home?
One of the biggest traumas that affected me outside of the home is that my dad never accepted me as his child. So there was never a bond between myself and my dad. Now, since we are in an interview, when I speak on my dad, I speak on the man that my mom married, not necessarily my biological dad. When I speak of my biological dad, I will say donor because he's never been a part of my life. When I say my dad, I'm speaking on the man that was married to my mom that raised me, just so we can get,
Sure.
clarity. My dad never, ever treated me like I was his child. And I have 2 siblings. I have a sister and a brother who are biologically his children. He didn't even treat my sister the right way. Like, I had a conversation with him on his 50th birthday, so that would have made me like 30 something, late 30s, early 40s. And he honestly told me he was not ready to be a father until my brother was born. And my brother is 8 years younger than me.
Okay.
So I went through a lot of trauma with him because he didn't treat my mother right. And there was a lot of verbal abuse, and that's where all of my trauma and abuse started, because that's where I learned it from. And as a segue or a sidebar, you don't have to be born from a person to pick up their traits. Okay?
Say that again.
You do not have to be born biologically from a person to pick up their toxic traits. And I'll stop there. So you go say what you want to say, because that right there is deep. It's deep.
It is. This is the Trigger Warning Talk podcast. If you're triggered at any point during this podcast and you need help immediately, call 911. That's going to generate police, fire if you need, EMS if you need. That starts the official documentation process, and it starts the ball rolling to get the help that you need and the resources. Because me being a retired medic, I've helped a lot of patients that I've had that are responding to calls like domestic violence or sexual trauma or what have you, and found out that they were having some mental health issues or just those particular issues that I just named in and of themselves. And me being a mandated reporter and me being a patient advocate, I have the ability to start that process as well when I show up and when I transport them to the hospital. Hey, we're en route. Here's what we saw. Here's what we did. Here's what we need. Can you have a psych nurse meet us in the ER? Can you have social services meet us in the patient's room? What have you? So I always tell people that so they understand that calling 911 is not just, if you need to get a cat out of the tree,
right,
somebody's shooting, or somebody's having a heart attack, or there's a fire, So call 911 because that officially gets the ball rolling for whatever help you need, including help with mental health issues related to DV or sexual trauma or missing persons or trafficking or whatever. I want to go back to what you just said, and I want you to expound on that because this is part of your story.
Mm-hmm. What I said was you do not have to be biologically born from a person to inhabit their traumas and their behaviors, because even though my mother was pregnant with me when she got with my dad, and he's not biologically my dad, I picked up all of his traits. The verbal abuse, the arguing, the yelling, like everything that he did to my mom that I didn't like, I picked up in my relationships, which was so crazy to me because, when you're in school, they're like DNA, and you get these traits because you were born up. No, that was a whole lie. That nature versus nurture is what it is. Okay, it doesn't have nothing to do with DNA. It's nature versus nurture. Whoever you're around, the environment that you're around, you pick up those traits. So in speaking or segueing into domestic violence, because I do know that it is Domestic Violence Month, I've only been married once and I'm only going to be married once. That's just my thing for me. Okay. I will say in the almost 15 years that I have been married, I have brought some of those toxic traits into my marriage. Now, keep in mind, when you get married, you have to understand it is not this whole butterfly and rainbows and it's always going to be peachy keen when you wake up. Now, you're going to have some good time. Look, marriage is beautiful. I wouldn't want life no other way than to be married. What I'm just trying to say striving to say before I get into the next portion is that marriage is work.
That's right.
Marriage, you have to refine and define your mind every day.
Yeah.
There's no cookie cutter. There's no cookbook. There's no guide, just like parent, none of that. And don't let social media tell you what your marriage is supposed to be, because as you see, there's a lot of celebrities going through divorces right now.
That's right.
So what I'm saying is this: when you get with someone that you really love, like deeply love, that you want to get married to, please do that shadow work and please heal your traumas before you go into that, because I didn't. And because I didn't, I took them same aggressive, verbal abusive, argumentative traits that I learned from my environment to my marriage. Okay. And now I'm not saying I was the fault of everything. What I will say is this. In a marriage, everybody is accountable for their own actions. Period.
Period.
I mean,
period.
You have to be accountable for your own actions. You have to be responsible for the responsibility that you have, knowing how the other person feels and what triggers the other person. Now, are you responsible for their traumas? No. However, you got to check yours. And so I'm saying that to say, when I came into my marriage, I was very argumentative, and I didn't even know I was verbally abusive. I didn't even know that. I thought it was my defense mechanism, you know? So when something would happen, I'd be like, well, da, 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 da. And, I mean, I'm talking about cannons. Pow, pow, pow. And then my partner, not coming from those same traumas, was not understanding why I was pow, pow, powing. So, childhood. You have to heal. And that's my answer.
Let's jump to the next phase of your life, which is the marriage.
Okay.
Mr. EA, as I affectionately call him. When you all met, how old were you all? Because you all met in school, right? High school sweethearts?
Yes. So, sheesh. I can't even remember when we. Well, I would say when I first remember would have been 7th grade. So what is that? 11, 12?
Oh, so middle school.
Yeah, middle school.
Junior high.
Yeah. So it's been a while.
Okay. So junior high. Did you have some of those outbursts back then, or did they come later?
They ultimately came later because I was an ugly duckling. Honestly, I was, let's see. I was an ugly duckling to me. I always have to clear up my words. I was an ugly duckling to me because I had no self-esteem. None. My home life was not good. My mom had low self-esteem. So she couldn't teach me how to love myself, to even go out in the world, to even know how to love other people. So I would say that I didn't have those outbursts then or that because I didn't have relationships. You know, I didn't put myself out there as a defense mechanism. I was more the home girl, if that makes sense. Like I was always, even through high school, like I was always the home girl with a whole bunch of guy friends, but I never wanted to be with the guys, if that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. That absolutely makes sense. When you all started dating, was this in high school?
So our relationship is very, I'll say different to today's relationship. So when I first met him in 7th grade, I couldn't stand him. Like, I just felt he was a class clown and he was against everything that my mom raised me. I was in the church and all this. Even though she had her trauma, she did her best, you know. I would say we rekindled in 10th grade where we went to winter formal together. And how we ended up going to winter formal is because my best friend was his friend. Okay. And everybody had a date, and we didn't go to the same school, so she wanted me to go to her school's winter formal, but I didn't have a date. Well, he was going to her school at that time. So that's how we ended up going to the winter formal in 10th grade. Now, mind you, in my yearbook, I put him as the worst date because I wasn't even into him. Like, no, seriously, we laugh about this now. You laugh, LP.
Wait, you put him in your yearbook as the worst?
I did. I put him as my worst date because I wasn't into him. Like, I was only going to the winter formal to be with my homegirl. Like, the EA that you know is the same well, I can't say, Lord, forgive me. he's very mature, but I'm talking about the charismatic, the goofy. He the
You
same
say you're
person.
that guy. Okay.
Yeah, right. Of course he's matured and grown. But I'm saying, so back then I wasn't into that. Like I was like, oh, he's goofy, white in class. Like, yeah. So I did put him as my worst date, but God knew what he was doing. So we didn't necessarily date in high school. Okay. So what happened was we did go to 10th grade winter formal. Still didn't like him. And we actually went to the same high school, but I was with someone else. Like I have an older child that that has a biological donor. Okay, not a dad. We'll say donor. My same
Bio
situation.
dad. Yeah,
Okay?
I call them bio dads.
Bio dad. Okay. So at the time when we were going to the same high school, when we got older, I was with my daughter's bio dad or whatever. Yeah. And then we always had an attraction to each other, if that makes sense. But he was always in a situation. I was always in a situation. And I'm not messing with nobody in those situations. Like, that's just not it. So it wasn't probably until we graduated from high school and we went on, I had a child and did my own thing, that we pretty much rekindled. And that's where our life started.
How long did you all date before you got married?
Oof. Ooh, that's so hard because we dated on and off. Okay. Let me think. I gotta think, y'all. Look, give me the Jeopardy me. No, I'm just like, let me think. Shoot. So what? 90.
You said you.
I would say that he was always in my life. You know what I'm saying? He was always in my life.
But just not in a relationship.
So, okay, I'll put it like this. We started getting serious, I was saying 1995.
Okay.
Because to be transparent, he had some legal issues and he ended up going to jail.
Okay. And he talks about that.
Yeah, and I know he talks about that, that's why I can talk about it. So that ain't no secret. So he ended up going to jail. Oh man, I don't even, was it 97? I can't remember. It was between 95 and 97. It's been so long. Okay. And so when he went to jail, that's really when we really became good friends. I'm just going to keep it real, because when you go to jail, ain't no relationships. You know how that jail talk is and all that. But we really became good friends, and I really looked out for him because I always had a love for him, because I always wanted to save him in what his situation was in a younger year, because my situation was different, and I always wanted to show him a different type of love, if that makes sense. So I would say in probably anywhere between 97, 98, that would probably be around the time that we started getting serious. Yeah.
What year did you marry?
We got married in 2008.
2008. What was the relationship like when you all got married? Because I just imagine that it had to be like just wild and crazy. I don't know why I have this maybe not for you, but you experienced some of this, because knowing the EA that I know, you're young, you're vibrant, you got a kid, you're on your own, you're dealing with him coming out of this legal situation and all this stuff. Like, how did that progress once you guys got married? Because like you said, the wedding is just a ceremony. The marriage is the day-to-day stuff.
Okay, well, you ready for the transparency?
That's
okay. It was tumultuous. When we first got married, we really shouldn't have got married. Mm-hmm. When we first got married, for me, I got married because I did love him. I do love him. Like that never is gonna change. I feel, and I can't speak for him, but these are my feelings in that situation. I feel for him, he proposed to me because he felt he was going to lose me.
Okay.
I got married to him because I felt like I could save him. So in the beginning, we did not get married for the right reasons. And I'm only knowing that now 15 years later, okay? Because when you do your own trauma work and you understand. So when we first got married, for me, yes, it was blissful in the fact that, yes, I'm married, this is my man. However, the reasons behind the marriage, I don't think were as blissful. So the first year was very hard. The second year was very hard. I want to say, I believe, because I got to remember, it's been so many years, in 2009, we were separated. Oh. Not even legally, because again, we were so young-minded in even knowing what marriage was, but we weren't even living together for a while. So, and I didn't even know if our marriage was gonna last, okay? Because again, I got married under trauma circumstances just like he did. Not saying that we didn't love each other. We definitely loved each other. We didn't understand what marriage really was. Oh. And that is an honest answer.
For you all during this separation period, and how long did that last?
I want to say it lasted at least for 6 to 9 months. It was a while. I remember it just being me and my kids for a long while, and him being out of town, so he said.
6 or 9, you said about 9 months approximately.
Wow.
You guys get back together.
Yeah.
What happens then?
Honestly, I don't even remember what brought us back to God. That's all I can say. I mean, to keep 100, God. I mean, I'm a praying wife. I love my husband with everything that I have in me. At a time, I loved him more than I loved myself, which is not good and it's very dangerous. But I did. And I saw what my parents, my mother, my grandmother went through in their marriages. And I feel like some of the things that may have happened in their marriages because of their expectations on what marriage should be. Now, me, in my healing, understand that when you get married, it's two people from two different backgrounds with two different aspects on life that are coming together to make one life. Now, back then, because again, remember the dad I didn't have, or the pouring into to know the boundaries, I didn't understand what it really was. Do you remember that Eddie Murphy Saturday Night Live skit where he was like, looking for nub in all the wrong places, looking for nub? That's what I was doing, okay? That's what I was doing, not knowing that's what I was doing. So I will say that it was God that brought us back together, and ever since then we've put God first, and it's always been easy, and we still have gone through some roadblocks, but I know who my Savior is, and I know who my refuge is, and I will have to say that's what brought us back together.
When was EA Jr. born?
He was born in 2006.
2006. Having him in this household, you guys are young couples. You're overcoming some pretty significant challenges early on in the relationship.
Definitely.
How did that play a part in some of the things that we were talking about in terms of like DV and different things like that? Because I know you said that that did play a part in your marriage.
You know what? I'm gonna be so. I ain't even gonna give no disclaimers. This is my last disclaimer. Talibah, transparent. You're gonna get the truth. He saw a lot, and honestly, a lot of it was me. as I've been the aggressor when it's come to domestic violence. I can't sugarcoat it. I have. A lot of it is just from what I saw. As I said, you pick up the traits from the environment that you're in. When I was growing up, I used to really think, even though my mother is a totally different person, they're not married no more. They're happy in their own separate rights. My mother, I always viewed her as weak because I didn't understand. And I always told myself, I'm never going to be like her. I'm never going to do what she did. If anybody ever do this, I'm going to do this. So that's what ended up happening. Whereas my partner is more a talker. He's more, let's talk through it. Let's find a common ground. I was more, nah, you trigger me. What's up? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, to keep it real. I done thrown some balls. I done slapped. I done picked up stuff. I done grabbed knives. Like when my son was here, like my son has seen a lot, and that's why I'm glad we're talking about this, because men are not always the aggressors. Women can be the aggressors when it comes to domestic violence, because I was an aggressor. And of course we could say, oh, well, he made me. And no. Each individual person is responsible for their own emotional intelligence and how they react to certain situations. And it's not until you go through your own healing to where you understand that. So I'm not saying it's an easy thing. What I'm saying is now I'm not saying he didn't trigger me. However, triggers come in all fashions. You still have the understanding on how to react. My reactions were horrible because it's what I saw in my house. So I was verbally abusive. I did talk very down to my husband. Like I said, I slapped, I've thrown bows, I pulled knives, I've threatened, Not saying he ain't done anything, but what I'm saying is we talking about me.
Just talking about you. Right.
I'm talking about me and what I'm doing. So yes, I have definitely caused that.
And I appreciate your candor, because as you said, this is October. One of the things that is celebrated in October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Yes.
And so I've had numerous conversations about men in domestic violence from the perspective of the man or person that identifies gender-wise
as a man,
and being on the receiving end. Because a lot of times, and when we had the journaling room the other day, we talked about that. Yeah. And all of this month, we've been talking about domestic violence in different ways in some of these different rooms. For you being the aggressor, because I always say when it comes to domestic violence, anybody can give it and anybody can get it.
Okay.
And when it comes to domestic violence, my thought process is a little different than a lot of what other people think, because I always say domestic violence does not just happen with somebody that's in your four walls and under your roof.
Exactly.
It's violence that you experience wherever you feel you lay your hat, wherever you feel comfortable, wherever that domestic place that you call home that might not be your home, where you take a bath and change your clothes and
your safe haven.
It's your safe haven. It could be your workplace. It could be your school. It could be your house of worship. It could be your grocery store. So when we see these breaking news stories about these acts of violence that happen in these different places, that affects everybody, even if you're not in that city or that state.
Right.
Because these acts of violence are happening domestically where you feel safe and comfortable. I always go to a Harris Teeter grocery store. If something were to happen, and there was just a news story the other day about a knife incident with a patron at a Harris Teeter that was really close by where we live. And so I'm like, man, I might not go to that Harris Teeter anymore. There was a incident that happened at the Walmart not too far from here. Same thing. When we saw what happened at the grocery store in New York, things like that. So I attribute those to the acts of violence.
Mm-hmm.
Those people were targeted because that's the store that they always go to. They were targeted on a number of different things, but that was one of them. And so getting back to the homestead, you being a person that perpetrated that, what were some of the things that he would say to you when you would be on fire, as I call it?
Honestly, it wasn't necessarily what he said. It was the actions that were being portrayed. And for me, I'm like a really easygoing person, but when I feel like I'm being manipulated or I feel like I'm being taken advantage of or taken for granted or even disrespected, it's just something that at that time, at that time I couldn't handle. Now, me today, I'm totally different. Like I'm not if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. Because I know my relationship with God, I know what we're doing, I know my journey, I know what's going on. Back then, what it was because I never had that validation from my fathers, whether it was my donor or my dad, from my husband to do something. Now, mind you, since we being candid, it wasn't nothing like, oh, he just didn't put the toilet seat down, or oh, he didn't wash the dishes. No, we talking about some infidelity. Okay, let's keep it 100. And it triggered me. And that triggered me because it took me back to a place where what I'm not good enough. Like my dad didn't feel like so what, no man can be in my life. No man feels that I'm good enough for real. And at that point, what happened was I took all of the hurt from my biological, my donor, and from what I was going through at that time. And that's where the violence came from. I felt like my self-worth was being questioned and I didn't like it.
For you in that situation, you're going through all these emotions from your bio dad to your dad that raised you to this situation with the infidelity, and you're going from 0 to 10, which a lot of people will say, hey, you know what? When it comes to infidelity, it's like the old saying, all is fair in love and war.
Mm.
And we know that a lot of times when we listen to stories about domestic violence, you'll hear stories where, man, we never had an issue with domestic violence until somebody cheated.
Mm.
Or the only thing that would make me yelk you in your jaw, as we used to say in St. Louis, haul off and bust your head to the white meat.
To the white meat, okay.
That's a Midwest thing, y'all. I'm just telling you. I don't
I'm
know.
just saying, okay.
The only thing that would make me bust your motherfucking head to the white meat would be an act of infidelity. So when you think about going through that whole scenario, I wonder for you, that experience, like how do you resolve that without the violence? Like what made you say, you know what,
Good question.
I can't do that because lay it all out.
All right. Well, I do want to go back really quickly.
Sure.
So before this, before my husband, when I was with my daughter's donor, that was maybe the second incident that I had experienced domestic violence. Now, I had experienced some or I don't know if it's called domestic violence, if it's from a parent, but whatever.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's violence. Moral to the story is my dad was physically abusive with me as well. Like he punched me, he threw a screwdriver at me. Like so by the time I got to this, I'm like, I'm not dealing with that with no man. So before my husband, my daughter's donor, had physically abused me.
Okay.
And he broke into my home. And pretty much, I guess there was a rumor that I was pregnant, which I wasn't. He kicked me in my stomach, like I'm talking about kicking a kickball. Okay, you know, you put your foot all the way back and boom, yeah. Kicked me in my stomach, you know, hit me in my face. And he actually, like, I was laying on my back and like he just really stepped on my face and said, I should really just step on your head and kill you right now. So, okay, so we going from what I seen with my dad to this to a marriage. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't skipping those steps. Okay.
No, and thank you for adding that context to it, because again, what I want the listeners to understand is anybody can give it and anybody can get it. There's always a building process to
it. Exactly.
Nobody just starts off hauling off, busting somebody's head to the white meat. I don't care what it's about. You know,
at all.
So
especially when you don't have that spirit to do that. That's not my spirit to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You know, we know and we've seen studies and read information where, hey, you meet somebody, like you said, it's all roses and all that stuff. Somebody might get yelled at. Somebody might get in somebody's face in their personal space, not on some lovey-dovey stuff.
Right.
Or you might get grabbed, pushed, shoved, an object thrown at them being thrown. It's an escalation thing. To domestic violence in terms of it may start off verbally, emotionally, and then that narcissistic abuse kicks, that cloud comes in, and everything else under that, it's like the hurricane coming in. You know, and as it get closer to the eye, it gets worse and worse and worse. And it's like, man. So when I think about domestic violence, I think of it like the hurricane coming off the ocean. Man. You know, and as it gets closer to that eye wall, it gets worse and worse and worse. The escalation part of it. For you, what was the final straw that said, you know what, we can't be like this. We can't do it. I can't do this.
Thank you.
I can't do this. This is your story. I can't do this anymore. Because somebody might die.
Yep. You know what? God is so good in my life, even though I didn't even realize what was going on with that. My final straw is when my only son, asked me, Mom, how many chances are you going to give Dad? Yeah. And when my son asked me that, it like took me to a whole nother portal of thinking. Okay. It took me out of where my trauma came from, domestic violence, being in my, it took me to a whole nother level of, I have to really protect my son. And when, you know, I can't speak for all women, but for me, my kids are my life. And if you don't want to come home or be here or be in the same establishment that I'm in because you don't feel comfortable, that bothers me. And right at that point, I need to get my shit together. Like, seriously. That was the point.
How old was he?
See, he's 14, 15. Within the last year or two. And really I really didn't really have a good answer. Like, because see, what I want people to understand is this. Every person goes through their own journey and they have their own tolerance level. For me, no, I'm no longer getting abused physically, mentally. You know, I made my choice. I stayed in my marriage. That's what I wanted to do. That's not what everybody else does. That's not what everybody else is going to do. That's what I chose to do for me. And my marriage actually has been blessed since then, you know. However, my marriage didn't start getting blessed until I started being obedient to God and understanding that you can't change a person. And that was one of my mistakes. I really tried to change my husband. I thought if I overloved him, I loved him this much, he would love me the same. No, it don't work like that. A person doesn't change unless two things happen. One, God come in their life and they miraculously put them through something that they be like, woo, yep, got to get it together. Or B, they want to change on their own. That's the only two options. There ain't no, I'ma love him more than, and do you know women? Look, I'm speaking to the women now. Do you know women how many years that I said, oh, I'm going to overlove him more than he loved me, and that got me nowhere? Because you know what? Everybody's love languages are different, one. And two, you cannot overly love a man to change him. It doesn't work like that. He will want to have to change on his own. And ladies, if he doesn't want to change, then you have to make some decisions. Prayerfully and thankfully, mine wanted to change. So that's why I'm still here. Best believe if he didn't.
You're right. Yeah. I had an experience because I've been married before. And Mrs. LP currently.
I love her. Tell her I love her though.
Look, don't. She's in the other room right now. See, y'all always want to. Yeah, see, she's not the disembodied voice. Sometimes she is, but y'all got to understand she's a very shy, introverted person. Now she's starting to come out of that, and I believe me being with her is helping her do.
And who you are, exactly.
And who I am. But you know what? Sometimes it's like, I don't want to poke the bear.
Because you know she going to come with
it. Because like when I'm doing this podcast, sometimes she'll be kind of ear hustling or whatever.
That's what we do.
And it's a good thing because, you know, she's part of the show because when I do the missing persons component, that's her baby.
Oh, that's what's up.
Because, you know, her day job is a project manager for a Fortune 100 company, but when she's not working, she's a true crime detective. She's been that way for probably over 20 years.
Wow.
She's a rape addict. She's been doing that for over 20 years. She also gets involved in missing person cases. Mm-hmm. She's gotten involved in some national missing person cases. But you never see her at the press conference and you never hear her giving an interview because she'll assemble all the people that she assembles or gets that she finds to get involved. And a lot of times they don't even charge for their services or whatever. She's just a great humanitarian. And that's one thing that I absolutely love about her, even if we weren't married. If I just knew that stuff about her, I would say the same thing. So it's not a biased thing. Now, Mrs. LP hates sometimes when I'll say, you know what? I got one question for you, but it's in 27 parts.
Oh, you got A, B, C, D, E, F.
And she was like, see, LP, your ADD is kicking in. You're going to be going in left field. I'm like, no.
Right.
I'm keeping it simple. I can't help it that it's in 27 parts. Like, you know, it's only one question. Now, the reason I bring it up is everybody that's married, and I'm talking specifically to the married folks in here. I'm not gender be damned.
Okay. Whatever. Married. Who cares?
You have to know your partner, and your partner has to know you. I believe that ignorance is not bliss, especially in a marriage. I believe that when it comes to being married, you got to have such a communication with that person that it's almost telepathic. It's almost like you develop this metaphysical clairvoyancy, not on everything, but on a good number of things.
Yep.
I know her triggers. I know what buttons to push. And likewise.
Yep.
You know, I was talking to somebody earlier and I said, you know, sometimes people like pushing your buttons. And I'm this type of person that, you know, if I got a button right here that has the do not touch sign, with the red circle
Yep.
going
The
through,
big red circle. Yep.
and the button is metal and it's all rusted and shit, don't bring your punk ass over here with some WD-40 trying to,
Exactly. That's
you know
how
what I'm
it is.
saying? Like, don't do that because you're poking the bear. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't mean that it's going to be a physical violent reaction. It don't have to be a physical violent reaction. I don't want to yell at you. I don't want to scream at you. I don't want to be in your face. I don't want to hover over you. I don't want to do anything negative in that situation. I want to bring positivity to that negative situation to balance it out because that's what we're supposed to do.
That's exactly.
That's what we're supposed to do. So the other night we were sitting in the room and we were watching some, I think it was Unsolved Mysteries or something like that. It was something we were watching on TV.
A show.
And we had a discussion that started to get heated. And the reason it started to get heated was a misunderstanding of who she is in terms of certain things that I say to her may be triggering because of her ex-husband and how he was very emotionally abusive.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes she's on edge because she doesn't know if that might be something that I may do.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes she'll have a response like, well, I don't want to argue. Now, that's a big pet peeve of mine when somebody says that to me. I don't care who it is. It don't even have to be Mrs. LP. Because my definition of arguing is I'm not a lawyer. Lawyers argue. I don't argue.
She's like, she don't want to be combative. Like, I just don't even want to do it. Yeah.
And she was like, well, can we just drop? I said, no, we don't do that. We're going to straighten out whatever. I don't want to go to bed mad or upset or whatever. Let's talk, because I'm not arguing. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell at you. I didn't curse you out. I didn't threaten you. I didn't, none of that stuff. So I didn't check off any of the boxes.
Any of those boxes, right?
I didn't check off any of those boxes. We're just having a disagreement. And you know what the disagreement was about more so than anything? I didn't know that if I say ABC, she may perceive it as, oh shit. And I was like, now that I know that about you, I got to put that in the toolbox. I got to put that in the memory box or whatever so I can approach it different. We can still have the same conversation, but I might change the words. And again, It wasn't a yell. It wasn't a vulgarity. It wasn't anything like that. The communication has to always be on point, and you got to recognize when it's going south. That don't mean, okay, let's keep going south. That means, whoa, time out, stop, hold on.
Let's figure it out.
Pause. Like, wait a minute. Why are we going south? Because we was just chilling and stuff. Where are we? Oh, I get it. You misunderstood where I was coming from. I misunderstood how you was taking it. Once we had that conversation, and it was like, oh, see, I didn't know that about you. She was like, oh, I didn't know. And then we went back to laughing.
I'm telling you, those simple, and sometimes you have to have those uncomfortable conversations. And that's what I think that people are like nervous about. Because I used to be one of those, oh, I don't want to have this because maybe he'll think like that. As a married couple, you're supposed to be a team. You're supposed to be able to talk about any and everything, no matter what. And really, I like what you said, because the communication, though, starts from the understanding of how to communicate. And I will make an example of what you said as far as triggers. Like, because of what I've gone through, I had, because I'm working on myself, abandonment issues, So when my husband would be out of town, on business or whatever a lot, I started taking it personally. Like, you just don't want to be with me? Like, what's going on because of those triggers? Like, why am I? This is what my mind is telling me, fooling me. Why you not good enough? Why he want to keep going out of town? Why he want to, you know what I'm saying? So I think it's always good. And that's one of the things that we are definitely learning to do, is have those uncomfortable conversations when you have a misunderstanding, because it doesn't matter if you're healed or if you're going through your healing. Okay, there has to be some kind of shake up to make it right.
That's right.
You can't just continue to be who you are, and then, what do they say? You can't keep doing the same thing and accepting different results. That's insanity, right?
Insanity, yeah.
Okay,
Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Different results. So, like, when it comes to marriage or relationships, if you keep doing the same thing and you get the same result, you might have to step out on faith and do something different. And I know for me, I was so in my own trauma that I wasn't comfortable. That's the best word I can use. I wasn't comfortable enough at that time to have those uncomfortable conversations, because I felt like it was going to be something to me. Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not. Dang all that. Okay. Learn, heal yourself. This is what I'll just tell you. Go through your own healing so you know who you are. And then that way you're even able to love or to pour into somebody else. Because what happens is, and what I went through, because I wasn't healed, I was self-sabotaging my own relationship, because I didn't feel that anything could come good to me because of how I felt about myself. So if you don't feel like there's anything that can come good to you, how are you going to feel that there can be anything that can come good to your relationship? So every bad thing that was happening in my relationship, oh, that's normal. Oh, that's what I deserve. That's a lie. So I would say, when we talk about marriage, not to cut you off, two people got to be whole. It ain't no 50-50. It should be really 100, and then you come together. Yeah. But I know, we got traumas and stuff, so I'll give you 85. You know, whatever. But yeah, we got it. We got to do that self-work so it can work.
That's a great segue, talking about help, because you've heard me say it. Mr. EA loves when I say I can't do dialogue only, because if it's about dialogue only, I'm out. I'd rather sit on the couch binge watching anything on Netflix or TV and picking the lint out of my belly button. I can't do the dialogue by itself. I got to have some action plans, at least one, on what's the resolution.
What we going to do?
What we going to do? Because talking is just bullshit. Like the men in the room. When men want to talk shit, they go to two places, the bar and or the barbershop.
Yeah.
So in a relationship, hey, what are we going to do about this scenario? What are we going to do about this situation? Mrs. Allen, what was therapy for you? How did you overcome these traumas of DV?
Well, it did take me a while. And as I said in my introduction, it really wasn't until the last 4 years. Like, I had to really go through the fire. I raised my daughter's 26. Thank God, she told me that she learned what not to do from watching me, which some parents would take as a dig. I took it as a blessing. Yeah. Please don't be like me.
Please don't be like me. Please.
Okay. Yeah. So, I'm glad for her. My son, I'm just blessed that, like I said, gardening, that's what saved me. I have am still healing, but I have just really opened my eyes in the last 2 years in regards to who I am again. And I'm almost 47 years old this year. So it has no age limit on when you find yourself or when you get it together. I would pray that people would find it younger, so they won't have to go through many trials and tribulations. But I had to take those left turns at Albuquerque. That was for me. That was my journey, and that's what I would have been on. But gardening saved my life. And the reason why I would say gardening saved my life in regards to my trauma and what I was going through is, as I was starting to do that, I noticed that when you have soil and you put the seeds in the soil, it's darkness, and you have to go to a darkening period. And it's, I know people are probably seeing that this is crazy, but I'm gonna stop saying it's crazy because this is my truth and my journey. When I was actually doing the gardening, it was like I was replanting myself. Like God was talking to me like, this is your rebirth. So as I started doing that and planting each individual plant in the dirt and then having to water it and have patience and trust that what I'm doing is going to grow it, it built my relationship with God, because that's what he was doing with me. Like I had to get to the bottom of what I felt. And so he needed to replant me and to really nurture me and feed me, which came from reading my Bible, going on the morning manna on Clubhouse, just being around positive people, really understanding this is what I need for right now. I cannot be for my husband right now. I got to fix myself for me and my children, because I seen how they were suffering during that time. They were both very, like, we're a close-knit family, so what one feels we all feel. Sure. So my kids were feeling the separation between my husband and I, to where it was putting them at odds with their dad, and I just didn't like it. So yes, gardening saved my life, and that is why now I do know that's my purpose and that's my ministry, honestly. And I know for some people y'all won't get it, and that's okay, but what saved my life is my relationship with God and my understanding that as humans, we all have to go through a planting season, to where we have to go through the darkness to really find and understand who we are. And God keeps watering and nurturing us. And when we blossom, that's when we walk into our purpose. And that's when life starts.
Did you and or Mr. EA seek any other therapeutic measures or modalities, like professionally?
Yes, we did go through marriage counseling. However, at that particular time, my husband was still doing what he was doing. So I mean, I will say this. It opened my eyes. However, I feel that counseling only works when a person is ready to receive it.
Yes.
And I feel like at the time when we did marriage counseling, it was just something to soothe me. It wasn't something that we necessarily were in agreement to what he wanted to do to change, because at that time he was happy and comfortable what he was doing. Okay. So I mean, what was going to counseling going to do? He was content. I was the one that wasn't content, So for me, and I'm speaking for me, counseling didn't work only because we were not both at the same place to want to be heard.
When you talk about planting and gardening, that's a very great example, the rebirthing process. It's like you're taking this seed and you're putting it into the dirt, and it's just like you got to water it, you got to tend to it, you got to weed it, maybe fertilize it, and you're developing this new entity to sprout out, get sunlight, and first grow from there. And I think in relationships, I think when you get married, that love seed that was planted in your heart, your marriage is basically like your gardening.
Hello.
Your marriage is your garden.
Yes, it is.
I have weeds. You're going to have critters. You're going to have the elements.
Yep.
And those elements could be the actual elements.
Elements or anything else.
Anything else, whatever you call elements. You have to be that gardener that's tending in both people. And so that's a great analogy that I didn't look at it like that until you said it. I absolutely love that.
That's real, because in any relationship, whether it be your spouse, your children, your parent, like friendship, like all relation, okay, let me say, that's why I know my mission. My mission is to pretty much explain or at least share that when God created us all, we are all connected to nature and everything, because as humans, we need the same thing that plant needs. The same thing you just said. And let's just put the relationships to the side, okay?
Yep. Yep.
As an individual, to succeed in this life, you need nurturing, fertilizing, watering, pouring into, and to make sure that you're in the right elements, meaning being around the right people. Okay, that's the same thing with gardening, especially speaking about marriages. Because see, one thing that I feel like people misconstrue, oh, when you get married, it's just gonna be perfect. No, you still have to date your partner. Yep. Okay, you still have to make time. The same things that you did to get your partner in the beginning, you have to do to keep them in the marriage. It
Sometimes
don't stop.
even more.
Or more.
Sometimes even more.
Okay, like I said, I've been almost married 15 years. Do you think in 15 years the same things that when we first got married is going to work now? No, because we're two different people. In a marriage, you continue as individuals to grow as individuals. You have to. You don't want to be in a marriage that you're going to stay in the same place forever. That ain't growth. And I'm sorry, if anyone's in that type of, you might want to just seek something, read some books, or do something, because that ain't it. You want to continue to grow. Now, the problem comes if you and your partner are not in alignment with the growth. If one person wants to stay stagnant and one person wants to grow, then you might want to, get some counseling or, try to do something like that. But I really feel like in all aspects of life, maturity and growth is a journey. Life is a journey. It's not a destination. You don't get to a certain place and then like, okay, I'm done. No, you get to that milestone and then you're like, okay, we made it. There's another one. What we going to do to get there? So yes, it's always going to be a journey, not a destination.
Miss Talibah, I could talk to you every day and twice on Sunday.
Me too, because I love you, brother. We always can talk.
Look, we're not going to do a 3-hour podcast.
Okay, not tonight.
So if we got to come back at a later time, we'll come back at a later time. Because there's some other things that you have brought up, not today, but in other rooms, like in Clubhouse, that I'm like, damn, you know what? I would really like to talk to her about that in particular. Because again, I love your perspective on anything that we talk about. So I'm gonna have to have you come back at a later time.
I'd love to come back.
I wanna move to the shameless plug section. And what I like to do is I want to bring back up on the screen. So if you don't look at this podcast, you're gonna miss some of this stuff, but I'll have the links for it. You do the Pure Love Garden Therapy Co-op, which you just talked about, and there's 3 different shows that you're a part of. Can you tell us real quick about Analyze This, Meet the Allens, and Tea Time with Tea?
Yes, I'm excited to talk about those. So yes, my husband and I have a podcast, Analyze This Topic. It is on all platforms. We would really appreciate YouTube. No, I'm just playing. But yes, so we actually have a show called Meet the Allens, where it is he and I, we talk about marriages, relationships, and again, transparency is key with me. So I'm the same chick here as I am there. The same things we talk about here, we talk about there. Please check out seasons 1 and 2. We are recording season 3 right now. And actually, season 1 and 2 would be a good segue for where I am right now, because those 2 segments were recorded during some of my darkest times, like when I was going through what I just spoke to. So you will definitely be able to see all the conversations, the different topics we talk about, because I'm still going to be the same. And we don't agree all the time. So you'll see, if y'all want some good, what they say, some entertainment, go there. We also do have every Monday on Clubhouse Pacific Standard Time at 6 p.m. We do have Meet the Allens. Sometimes I do just do a segment, Tea Time with Tea, all things ladies, where it's just myself and all the ladies come. We talk about all kinds of things that have to do with women. whether it's relationships, wearing many hats, being parents, discrepancies in the workplace, sexual harassment, just love jonesing, supporting. So, please do look out for that on Clubhouse. And then sometimes we do actually have the podcast where it is Analyze This, and it is myself and my husband. We talk about all kinds of different situations, just like we do on our podcast. We call it the Think Tank. And then, of course, for me, yes, I do have and am the owner and CEO of Pure Love Garden Therapy, which is a venture that I have actually been in, I would say maybe for about 6 months in regards to my first co-op. However, I've been gardening for a long time. As I mentioned, that is my therapy, but my mission is to use the gifts that God gave me with my hands to feed as many people as I can. I have a co-op here in Portland, Oregon. I have a co-op in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I'm definitely looking to expand in all areas. So I'm going to be looking into the USDA grants. And, I have a nonprofit. So if anybody definitely wants to support, definitely look into Tea Time with Tea or Pure Love Garden Therapy Co-op, because it's going to come to a time, y'all, and I know this ain't got nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I don't do politics, but I do pay attention. It's going to come to a time where we're going to have to make choices in regards if we're going to be able to go to the grocery stores to get fresh fruits and vegetables. The fresh fruits and vegetables that they have in the store right now that they slap in these organic tags on, please do your research and look at the farmers, because a lot of them do use pesticides and other chemicals, which makes the fruit and vegetables non-organic. What makes something organic is when it's grown specifically from the soil with no extra chemicals, just a little fertilizer and maybe some organic soil. Anything outside of that, you might want to check it out. So keep watching your girl. I'm telling you, God has a purpose and a mission for my life. And gardening is who I am.
I got another podcast that I want to be doing more with. It's called Pre-Hospital EMS Talk.
Ooh.
Me being a first responder, even though I'm retired, I talk about all things related to health from an EMS perspective. So I definitely want to have you come back on and expound on that, because health is wealth.
Yes.
People are moving towards more vegan, vegetarian, different things like that. My best friend, his wife, and they just bought a new house, and he built this garden for her. And
nice.
She would show these vegetables.
Look, I gotta show my babies.
Yeah, she would show these vegetables, and it's like, it's nothing like you see in the store. Like, that looks like some alien shit compared to the standard size that you see in the store.
Right.
These are what I'm saying? It's a whole different thing. And when I talk about health, because we know, especially with melanated folks, we have everything is higher. Diabetes, heart disease, anything that affects your organs is worse with melanated folks. So I want you to come back on that particular show, and we'll talk about that later, and talk about how gardening can help with health and health issues.
And how easy it is. It's not as hard as people think it is. Like, you don't have to have land. Believe me, I didn't start with no land. Yeah. So, yeah.
Definitely. I want you to hold on, because we're going to move to the last part, which is the missing person case. And this missing person case is about a young lady in my neighboring state of Georgia, specifically in Atlanta. Her name is, and I hope I'm not jacking it up, ALLAHNIA LENOIR. We'll talk about that. I'm going to pull up the news story in a second, but I got one question, no parts.
No 21 parts?
No, it's 27 parts. You got to get it right. And I'll tell you where that comes from later. But see, she gonna hear that shit. I'm telling, please don't even start laughing, because she feels those vibes when y'all women be laughing, because a lot of
we got that.
Yeah. Yep. So don't bring her in here, because we'll be on here for another hour or so. So anyway, I got one question for you. If you could write a letter or an email to younger Talibah at any age, what would you say?
Ooh, I love that question. Ooh, the biggest thing that I would say is always, because I always had a strong relationship with God, follow that no matter what anyone else thinks of you, you have everything you need. And lastly, no matter what the world thinks about you, you are enough.
Damn, I love that. I absolutely love that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up this. I'm going to increase the size of the screen, first of all.
Yes, let's hear about this young lady.
Again, this story comes from WTVM.com. WTVM.com. This is about a young woman named ALLAHNIA LENOIR. Hold on a second.
From Atlanta has been missing for nearly a month, and now her family and investigators believe there might be a connection to Columbus. News Center 9's Catrice Nolan joins us live in our newsroom tonight with more on what she found out from the woman's mother and a private investigator close to this case. So, Catrice, what more can you tell us about this missing woman?
Well, Barbara, 24-year-old ALLAHNIA LENOIR disappeared from an apartment complex in Midtown Atlanta late last month. Her mother telling me today that ALLAHNIA and a friend went to meet two men. And she says her daughter never came out of that apartment complex. She also says after not hearing from her daughter after a couple of days, she started living a nightmare.
My daughter has vanished. She's gone.
Jeanette Jackson is pleading to the public for help to find her daughter, 24-year-old ALLAHNIA LENOIR. Jackson says she doesn't know what happened to her daughter, only that she went into an apartment building in Midtown Atlanta and never came back out.
4 people were seen going into the unit and only 3 came out.
For her, it's puzzling, as she says her daughter went with a friend to meet men at the apartment and the friend left her there, thinking she'd be safe.
Were you guys drinking, or, were you guys partying, or, what's up? And she's just like, no, Mom, I would have never left her. She was good. I said, well, why did you leave her?
Now, Jackson believes LENOIR may have been moved to Columbus or Upson County, Georgia. That information, she says, police in Atlanta are looking into thanks to tips from the public.
We've had a lot of tips. Luckily, the media has helped. Luckily, the just the circulation of the situation, that it has allowed for people to give tips that she may have been moved, or these people were involved in something directly between the time she came up missing.
ALLAHNIA's father has also hired a private investigator, TJ Ward, who says this is a complicated case and maybe something else happened to ALLAHNIA.
She's not in the apartment, and I know there's 2 individuals that might be called suspects now, that were involved, that were with her, and they're one of them's on probation in Rockdale County, Georgia.
Whoever ALLAHNIA is with, her mother wishes someone would speak up. She says she will come to Columbus or anywhere else to bring her daughter home.
If she's out there, even if it's just her body, that's why it's important that if she was moved, if they've seen them moving something, if something's suspicious about any of these people in those areas.
Now, we reached out to the Columbus Police Department and Atlanta Police, and we have yet to hear back from them on where the investigation stands right now. Now, Jackson also says if you know any information, she is urging you to call the Atlanta Police Department. Reporting in the newsroom, Catrice Nolan, WTVM News Leader 9.
Any little bit of information could bring a break in this case. Our hearts and prayers certainly going out to that mother and the family. Catrice, thank you very much.
So, anyone with any information about ALLAHNIA's disappearance is asked to call or contact the Atlanta Police Department Homicide/Adult Missing Person Unit at 404-546-4646. 4235. Again, anyone with any information, good, bad, ugly, and or indifferent, about the whereabouts or the disappearance of ALLAHNIA LENOIR is asked to contact the Atlanta Police Department Homicide Adult Missing Person Unit at 404-546-4235. I will put the link to this story in the show notes, along with the links to Talibah's contact information about her foundation, about her gardening therapy co-op, and about her IG. So you can contact her about any gardening tips or the podcast and much, much more. I want to thank Mrs. LP, our in-house, missing person detective, true crime detective, all of the above. And I want to specifically thank our guest, Talibah Allen. I love you so much. I love Mr. EA. I love little EA Jr. I'm just so thankful that you came onto the podcast. I want to always end with this: live in awareness, never live in fear. Remember that you matter. It starts with you. For Talibah Allen, this is the Trigger Want to Talk podcast. LP out.